Hi, I'm Gary Ford from Tiger Hobbies Limited. Welcome to this video about the F-35 Lightning II, its potted history and the models you can buy of this most up-to-date aircraft currently in service with the world's air arms. The F-35 Lightning II, formerly the Joint Strike Fighter, JSF, has been in concept since the early 90s and is involved into three main variants. First, the F-35A, a conventional takeoff and landing aircraft used mainly by the United States Air Force and exported to many other air forces, including that of Australia, the Netherlands, Italy, Japan, Norway, South Korea and Denmark. And it reached operational capability, or initial operational capability, with the United States Air Force in 2016. The second, which most of this video is about, is the F-35B, STOVL, short takeoff and vertical landing version, used by the United States Marine Corps and the United Kingdom's Lightning Force. Also, Italy and Japan have this variant as well. And this achieved its IOC with the US Marine Corps in 2015. The third and final variant is the F-35C, the naval carrier variant designed for catapult takeoff and arrested recovery, used only by the United States Navy and US Marine Corps, and it reached its IOC in 2019, the last of the variants. At the base of the display you can see the impressive Tamiya 148 kits of all three variants, the A, the B and the C, and I shall cover this towards the end of the video when I talk about the price of some of the model kits. You may also notice die-cast models of aircraft that are not F-35s on the display, such as the Harrier, F-15, Tornado, Eurofighter. All of these have a place in the F-35 story, either as aircraft involved directly in its development, or aircraft it replaced, or aircraft that it will complement in today's modern air forces. The F-35 is often misunderstood and gets a fair share of criticism, especially over cost. But air forces without F-35s risk falling behind. But equally, putting all your eggs in the F-35 basket isn't ideal either. The F-35 is an incredible aircraft, but it isn't the be-all and end-all. It must operate as part of a balanced force of aircraft and drones. Its fifth-generation stealth and computing power are second to none. However, it isn't particularly fast or agile, and the F-35B has a limited range compared to other conventional types. We will of course focus on the F-35B as it's in service with the United Kingdom Lightning Force. Now this consists of Royal Air Force 617 Squadron, the Dambusters of course, Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm 809 Naval Air Squadron, the Immortals, and 208 Squadron, which I believe is the Operational Conversion Unit. And the F-35B that the United Kingdom's bought, it's no surprise, it's the most complex and expensive of the variants. Some time ago, our local MP visited Tiger Hobbies Limited. This was to do with general business and how Tiger Hobbies were coping with post-Brexit. Now, at the time, John Ely MP, the Right Honourable John Ely MP, was just taking up his brief as the Shadow Defence Secretary, and now he is the Defence Secretary. But as a former member of the Royal Air Force, he was interested in my views on defence, just a general conversation, especially on fact of military logistics. But I've long believed that the UK chose the wrong mix by committing entirely to the F-35B programme. The RAF had in the past tried to make a bomber into a fighter with the Tornado ADV, Air Defence Variant F3. Now we're going the other way of trying to make a fighter, i.e. the Eurofighter Typhoon, into a bomber, i.e. the FGR-4. The F-35A costs roughly 2/3 of the F-35B, has about double the range, carries more weapons, and more importantly, is nuclear capable. The Eurofighter FGR-4 currently isn't nuclear capable. For all its advanced technology and incredible aeroplane, it's not clear to carry nuclear weapons. In June 2025, it was quietly announced that the Royal Air Force would receive the F-35A and rejoin NATO's tactical nuclear role. I'm not saying I had anything to do with this in my report and chat with my local MP at the time. it's just a massive coincidence. But it is a logical decision. This leaves the F-35B for carry operations and short-range tactical strike, the Typhoon FGR-4 for air superiority and conventional strike, and the F-35A for long-range and nuclear strike roles. You may have noticed suddenly the appearance of a Hawker Hurricane on the table or the display, as there's a lineage linking the F-35B back to the Hawker Hurricane. And this is the designer of the Hawker Hurricane, Sir Sidney Cam. He created those wonderful interwar biplanes such as Fury and Ordux. Also, obviously, the Hawker Hurricane and the workmanlike fighters that followed it, the Hawker Typhoon, Tempest, Sea Fury and Fury, and the Seahawk and Hawk Hunter jet. And his last project he worked on was the P-1127 VSTOL or Vertol experimental aircraft, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. The P-1127 led to the Kestrel, which was an evaluation aircraft, and this would eventually lead to the operational Harrier, the Hawker Harrier GR Mark I, entering Royal Air Force service in 1969 and the US Marine Corps service as the Aviator in 1970. One major challenge with the Harrier was pilot workload during the transition between forward flight and hovering with vector thrust. The aircraft demands exceptional pilot skills, and early accident rates were very, very high. The pilot's right hand on the stick with his left hand between the throttle and nozzle control. Some experienced Harrier pilots suffered crashes or ejections when getting this wrong, and the US Marine Corps lost some 66 out of the initial 114 Aviators in crashes from 1970 to the early 1980s. The Royal Air Force actually lost a similar amount of GR1, GR3s, over 60 in the same period. Many of ours, though, were due to low-level flying in poor European weather, but some were mixing up the controls of the throttle and nozzles. This sparked research into unified control system as far back as 1977. So, as mentioned, in the late 70s, the problem with the Harrier controls had been looked at by scientists and Royal Air Force test pilot Flight Lieutenant Peter Bennett at Royal Aircraft Establishment, Bedford. Bennett was one of the first ab initio pilots to go straight to Harrier from flight training, rather than ex-Hawk Hunter pilots converting to the Harrier or other platforms. If the Harrier needed to be developed or replaced by a more advanced aircraft with higher weapon carrying capabilities, longer range, far superior performance, this overworking of an already potentially stressed pilot needed to be overcome, with computer fly-by-wire aided unified controls to make the transition from wing flight to thrust flight much easier. Also, the early Harrier's operational life, the use of STOVL, short takeoff and vertical landing, or short rolling landings was more effective, so the Harrier could carry more weapons and fuel. Even though at air shows Harriers are seen taking off vertically and bound to the crowds, operationally it was just not practical in any way, certainly not with any amount of external weight when trying to take off vertically. Working with NASA simulators, Bennett and the RAE scientists devised a way to reduce the controls and pilot inputs, and by 1979 this became the VDAC project, or VSTOL Display and Advanced Controls, with an Harrier T2 XW175 as testbed, or certainly earmarked for testbed, for the early 1980s. The old premises was the front cockpit would have standard Harrier controls, with the pilot or safety pilot could take over at any time, and the rear cockpit would have any experimental controls. Money in the UK was always a problem, especially in the late 70s and early 80s, and the UK were kind of losing interest in the Harrier programme. So a less ambitious programme was introduced in 1982, again using XW175, called VAAC, Vector Thrust Aircraft Advanced Flight Controls. The Falklands War certainly re-engaged the UK with the Harrier after it performed brilliantly in that conflict, and the UK wanted to be back with the USA on the more advanced Harrier that would become AV-8B, GR5 and later GR7, GR9 and AV-8B+. The VAAC Harrier introduced the digital Harrier cockpit in its rear cockpit, but this was still a three-control system, stick, throttle and nozzle control, but connected electronically rather than mechanically. Even though Bennett and the Royal Aircraft Establishment Bedford had been working on unified control theories since the late 70s, it was not until the mid-90s that a more mature unified control system using a single mode controlling transition hovering and to help with conventional flight were fitted to the VAAC Harrier. There was some resistance by the Harrier Mafia, or the Hold and the Bold, to the new control systems, but new pilots out of training and straight to the Harrier, using it in the simulator, found it much easier to handle. About the same time as this was happening in the Harrier world, the Common Affordable Lightweight Fighter, or CALF programme, started in 1993 in the USA. This was the start of what would become the F-35 programme. This morphed in 1994 to the JAST, the Joint Advanced Strike Technology, that will replace F-16s, the Harrier AV-8B, and potentially the Hornet aircraft with the US Navy and Marine Corps. With UK committing to the programme in 1995, pilots from various services, including NASA, plus competing aircraft companies, were, in January 1994, given the opportunity to assess the different control laws using XW175 and see the work carried out by the VDAC and VAAC in unified controls. The USA was not convinced by the work in the UK on unified controls, and by this time the project had been renamed JSF, Joint Strike Fighter, with the Boeing X-32 and the Lockheed Martin X-35 design in the running. The trials of the VAAC Harrier with unified controls were carried out on a larger scale with more pilots in the late 90s at Boston Down, with pilots from the Harrier fleet and conventional fixed-wing fleets. Even though there were still teething problems, pilots from both disciplines noted how easy it was to get the aircraft into the hover. By this time, as usual, the UK had run out of money again, but the results were so encouraging that the USA decided to re-engage with the programme. And soon sea trials using the VAAC Harrier went ahead by the year 2000. By 2001, the X-35 had won the competition to become the Joint Strike Fighter. But arguments over which type of controls the ASTOV, which stands for Advanced Short Takeoff and Vertical Landing, F-35B variant, would have continued with much argument until 2002. Finally, it decided to use unified controls, first thought of back in the late 70s and early 80s by test pilot Flight Lieutenant Peter Bennett, plus scientist Peter Nichols and many others involved in testing. Almost another 8 years of testing went ahead before the first F-35B made it its first vertical landing in 2010, using its unified short takeoff and vertical landing control mode known as USC. There's no doubt about it, without the Harrier there would have been no F-35B. The UK declared the F-35B operational with its initial operational capabilities in January 2019 at Royal Air Force Marham. Prior to that, the first F-35B landed on HMS Queen Elizabeth in 2018, commanded by Commander Nathan Gray using a US Marine Corps F-35B, and a little later, Squadron Leader Edgell from the Royal Air Force would make the second landing on a UK carrier. As of the 26th of April 2026, the UK has 47 F-35Bs on inventory, having lost one in a recent deployment with Queen Elizabeth in the Far East. But Carrier Strike Group 25 has returned after an 8-month deployment aboard HMS Prince of Wales with 24 F-35Bs on one of the longest ever detachments, and this went through quite safely. So, before we talk about the models, one of the aircraft that's on the turntable, which is the UK F-35B, part from the UK Lightning Force, and this is from Carrier Strike Group 25, but it's in what we call Beast Mode. Now, Beast Mode is when the stealth part of the F-35 is not a priority, and it can carry a larger number of weapons to be hung from pylons on the wings. And the F-35B use more of the conventional role than stealth. For the aircraft to be truly stealthy, all the weapons have to be carried internally. This means the F-35, in all its variants, carries much less weapons than aircraft like the F-15 Strike Eagle. But there's a new way of using these aircraft. This is called the bomb truck system. This means sending in F-35s on the initial strike, stealthy with limited weapons, followed by aircraft like the F-15 Strike Eagle with masses of weapons that, if necessary, can be controlled by the lead F-35s of a strike package. So as you can see, the F-35 is more than just a fighter jet. It's a battle space manager. This is what a lot of people just do not understand about the F-35. I don't like the look of it. It don't look right. This is an incredibly powerful aircraft as far as computer processing and what it can bring to the airspace management. So, but also as a note, the United States Air Force have recently placed an order for nearly 300 brand new F-15EX Strike Eagles. As you can see, the need for aircraft that carry a large amount of ordnance at speed, plus more agile aircraft such as the later version of the F-16 or the Eurofighter Typhoon, where you need that deft touch of agility and air superiority. So, let's talk about the models that we've got on the table. So we'll start with the plastic construction kits. So on the top row, going from left to right, you've got a Tamiya 1/72nd scale F-35C. Now they also do the A and the B versions, and they're around about 40 quid, which is exceptional value for an absolute, almost perfect 72nd scale version of this jet. In the centre is a more of a budget response, and this is from Hobbies as Airfix. And this is a quick build F-35, very good model actually. It comes with the paint, tools and brushes, so if you're going to model your first F-35, I would certainly recommend the Airfix one, and that's about $19.99. Excellent value. I'll talk a little bit how Hobby missed the boat with the F-35 a little later. Next to that, to the left, is the Harrier F-35B, and that's around about the £30 mark. On the second row down to the left, you've got a larger 48 scale F-35B, again in the markings of the United Kingdom Lightning Force. So the Lightnings do not belong to the Royal Air Force, do not belong to the Royal Navy, they belong to the United Kingdom Lightning Force, obviously single service squadrons within that organisation. Now this is around about $74.99, again it's good value for a large aeroplane. In the centre is the Rebels F-35A Alpha version, and that's around about $26.99, so excellent model and again good value. And just to the right of that is a 1/72nd scale F-35C, again by Harrier. Not quite the level of detail and quality of the Tamiya, but still a fantastic model and somewhat cheaper, around about, again, about the £30 mark. And as mentioned before, down at the bottom, we've got probably the best F-35 models in plastic kits. The Tamiya 148 range. So left to right, you've got the Alpha version, you've got the B version, again comes in black as the United Kingdom Lightning Force, and to the right you've got the F-35C, the naval version. Now the A and the C are $89.99 and the F-35B are $99.99. But if you buy these models, these three models, or one of these three Tamiya 148 models, off our website, www.tigerhobbies.co.uk, don't follow the algorithm, as we're not monitorised, algorithms leading you to our eBay store. But if you come to our website, you'll see a book there called the Real to Replica. It's a modeller's guide to the F-35. It's worth about $17, $18.99. You'll get this book free if you buy the one of the models, one of the F-35 from Tamiya in 48 scale on the bottom row. I've only got a limited amount of books. We've got 6. We've got lots more books of model aircraft or about aircraft subjects that we'll be doing book offers later on. So this leads us to the die-cast models, which are lying down at the front. I'm just going to remove the Hawker Hurricane, so please excuse me for jumping in. There you go. So, going from left to right, showing a little Harrier. Now, some of these are out of stock, some of these from what we call our display boxes, just so we can display the Harriers in its development. So that first Harrier on the left is a Harrier in 72nd scale diecast of the earlier iteration, well, slightly more improved version of the GR1. It's the GR3 with the laser rangefinder on the front. Just next to that, to the right of that, is Harrier 1161. It's a GR5 that was converted to take a much powerful engine. So that GR3 was a metal aeroplane with a Pegasus engine, putting out 10,000 pounds of thrust. Quite powerful, of course, but 1161 had the new version of the Pegasus in a carbon fibre aircraft, putting out £23,000 of the thrust. A lot of work from the VAAC went into this Harrier as well, especially the way the pilot used the... so it still had the three controls, stick, and then to the left the throttle and the nozzle controls, but again these were controlled electronically rather than mechanically. And that, to your right of that, is a model just coming to stock for $69.99. It's HA2654, and it is a Harrier GR5 in that early green camouflage. And that's just coming to stock, and we've got more coming. We've only got about 15 in stock, but I've got a lot more coming later on. On the turntable, mentioned before, is the F-35B from Carrier Strike Group 25, HMS Prince of Wales, in beast mode. It comes with complete weapon set. It's got, you've got positional weapon bays and fan ducting bays and different versions of the duct fan at the end. The main engine nozzle, you can have it pointed out straight out for conventional flight, or as you can see, handled down as it comes around now for vertical landing. This is $83.99, and we have got plenty of stock just coming. In front of the display on the left, or the turntable, is a United States Marine Corps US Navy's F-35C. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I'll just put the... I'm just going to display both these models very briefly, excuse me. So this one is the F-35B in stealth mode, which is HA4624, not 4624B, and this is $79.99. But as you can see, the C model, the difference in the wing area is vast. So this is to help with this aircraft landing on the carrier, taking off on carriers, and it has a folding wing and everything. So just to the behind the F-35, the stealth version, pure stealth version. So all your weapons are internal on this aircraft, and it does come with all the weapons, JDAMs and ASRAAM missiles, but they're all in the weapon base. But you do get them. Behind that, you've got Tornado, which F-35B was supposed to replace, but we now know we're going to be getting F-35A. So that's more naturally the Tornado's replacement. And just to the right of those, you've got the F-15 Eagle. So this is a Lakenheath F-15 Eagle, just recently gone out of stock, but I will be getting more F-15s from Lakenheath. And this is the bomb truck system where these F-15 Strike Eagles carry vast amounts of weapons and ordnance to support F-35s. And next to it is a Eurofighter Typhoon, again for the air superiority. As we mentioned earlier on, the F-35 is not really a fighter. It's not that fast, it's not that agile. But as a battle space manager, it's second to none. So that shows a display on the more right-hand side of the aircraft it replaced, and two aircraft that you need the F-35 as part of a group of aircraft and not rely on the F-35 by itself. So once again, thank you for watching this video about the F-35.